it was one of those moments where run the race that God has set before you with all the passion that you can, and then turn and look and see who's next to you. And it was one of those moments where we're like, oh, hey, okay. And from there, we just really started, instead of doing ministry alone, we started to really kind of do ministry together. And God just took it from there, so. I was at an open Bible church camp, and I was approached by a couple who were youth pastors at the time. They were really able to share stuff that God was laying on their heart, and they shared with me that they were starting a church from the ground up. They were church planting in Wilmington, North Carolina, and Mike and Kayla Dickey. And they asked me to join their team, their launch team, be part of this beginning church. And knowing that I was at this crossroads of my life where I didn't really have anything, I was able to just step in, jump in, and say, yes, I'm going to run with this, and I'm going to be all in. I look back and think, if I hadn't, I would have missed so many beautiful parts of my life that God was laying out for me.
I grew up in upstate New York on a 100-acre beef farm. Tons of fun, tons of trouble. After I was saved, I decided that I needed to leave somehow, whether that was a couple cities away or what have you, but my grandmother had a beach house in Wilmington, North Carolina. So she told me, if you go down there and clean up my house and get the HOA off my back, I'll let you live there cheap. So I did that. I took advantage. I loaded my life into my LeBaron, including my dog. Drove down there 12 hours. So while I was living down there, my car broke down. I ended up asking the tow truck driver, so I'm new in town, I'm looking for a church. And he said, I see this bumper sticker all the time for Life Point Church. You should check it out. And I was like, okay, cool. So I go, and that's where I met Mike and Kayla Dickey, who were planting City Life Church at the time. And we formed this really tight relationship, mostly blossomed over quoting Adam Sandler movies and playing cards. And then progressively turned into, hey, why don't you come join this thing that we're doing? Planning a church in the inner city is like flying a plane and building it at the same time. It's a ton of fun, but you have no idea what's going to happen. But through that process, luckily you get to meet some awesome people that are also called to that. And I got to meet Jocelyn, and then eventually started dating. And she told me that if I wanted to be a pastor, that we should stop our relationship now. And I said, no problem. I'm going to be a missionary. We'll just travel the world. She's like, okay. And then it was probably like 6 months later, I kind of got my call into being a pastor. So kind of derailed all of that. But she stuck with me.
So Cody had been youth pastoring in Wilmington at City Life for about 3 years. Through a multitude of things, we felt like God was kind of switching stuff up a little bit. It was something we started praying about together, and God ultimately called us back to my hometown, my home church where I grew up, where my dad was now pastoring. The ministry God really blessed. It kind of exploded. We were really involved with a local school and lots of kids from there. We were at football games. We went to see the band. It was very much a thriving ministry, and God had really taken it and really blessed it. We have an 8-month-old son now, and so being around family with him has been great and fun and exciting. When we came back to be part of an awesome, thriving, established church, we still felt in our spirit that this isn't it for us, that God was still calling us to more.
I think we were really inspired by Romans 15, verse 20, where Paul says, and thus I make it my ambition to preach the gospel, not where Christ has already been named, lest I build on someone else's foundation. When God started pulling at us, we were not only inspired by what we had seen, but what God was laying on our hearts through that scripture. And we knew that we needed to preach the gospel and pastor a community that needed Jesus. And there's only one place that really stood out to us, and that's the graveyard of American Christianity, the Northeast. And we started praying about every single one of those states. And one day it was like, bam, Burlington, Vermont. And spontaneously we took a trip. One weekend, we just drove there and fell in love with it. It just checked off all the boxes in our mind of what God was calling us to. And everything that we were kind of looking for, we just knew in that moment that that's where we were going to be. That was the community that we were going to impact. And thank God it was a community that desperately needed Jesus, so it connected every dot. Seek City Church's vision is to bring our city truth, life, and purpose through the power of Jesus Christ. And I know that with the team that we have and with the passion that God has put in each and every one of our hearts, it can be achieved through our just faithfulness and following His lead. We're believing in that because we're willing to meet them where they're at, just like Jesus did. We want them to sit at our table. Our slogan for Seek City Church is actually, no one sits alone. We're not afraid of your hard questions. We're not afraid of your skepticism, because we have total faith in our God. And we know that even if you're at one end where it's like, I'm just dabbling in this, to the other end that is nearly self-righteous, you're not going to sit alone, because we're willing to walk through any version of this journey with you, because we know that your journey is just as much of an adventure as what we're doing moving to Vermont. And that's the whole reason why God even put the name Seek City Church on our radar. We want to seek with you. We're not asking you to seek and us to tell you the right answer. We don't have all the right answers, but we're willing to seek with you and do life with you and sit with you and just see where the adventure takes us.